It is 3 in the morning. You are lying in bed. The house is silent. Your partner is asleep beside you, breathing softly, and then you hear it. A low hum, distant but penetrating, like an idling diesel engine blocks away, or distant machinery running underground. A frequency you feel as much as hear, vibrating in your chest, resonating in your skull. You get up, walk through the house. The sound does not get louder or softer. It is everywhere and nowhere. You check the furnace, the refrigerator, the neighbors' houses. Nothing is running. Nothing can explain it. You go back to bed. The hum continues, relentless, monotonous. You try to sleep. You cannot. The sound drills into your consciousness. Hours pass. The sun rises. The hum finally stops. Or maybe you just stop noticing it. The next night, it starts again at 3 in the morning. And the next night. And the next. You mention it to your partner. They hear nothing. You mention it to your neighbors. They look at you strangely. You start to wonder if you are going insane. You are not. You are one of the approximately 2% of people in certain locations who can hear what has become known as the Taos Hum, a low-frequency sound that only a small percentage of the population perceives, a sound that has no identified source despite decades of investigation, a sound that has driven people to desperation, sleeplessness, and in some cases, thoughts of suicide. Welcome to Taos, New Mexico. Population 5,500. Elevation 7,000 feet. And home to one of the most thoroughly investigated and stubbornly unexplained acoustic mysteries in modern history. The Taos Hum first gained widespread attention in the early 1990s. Residents began reporting a persistent low-frequency humming sound. Not everyone could hear it. Only about 2% of the population. But for those who could, it was maddening. The sound was described as similar to a distant diesel engine. A low rumble, around 30 to 80 hertz, right at the edge of human hearing, but persistent, unrelenting, especially noticeable at night in quiet environments. People who heard it, called hearers, reported severe impacts on their quality of life. Insomnia, headaches, dizziness, nausea, anxiety, depression. Some moved away from Taos entirely. Others soundproofed their homes. One woman reportedly slept in her car parked outside town just to escape the sound. The complaints became numerous enough that the problem reached Congress. In 1993, Representative Bill Richardson, whose district included Taos, requested a federal investigation. The matter was taken seriously. This was not dismissed as mass hysteria or attention-seeking. People were genuinely suffering. A team of researchers from the University of New Mexico, Sandia National Laboratories, and other institutions descended on Taos. They brought sensitive acoustic equipment, spectrum analyzers, mapped the locations, tried to triangulate a source, and they found nothing. No unusual acoustic signals, no industrial source, no geological activity, no electromagnetic interference that correlated with the reported sound. The equipment detected nothing that could explain what dozens of people were clearly experiencing. This is where the Taos Hum stops being a simple noise complaint and becomes something genuinely mysterious, because the people hearing it are not making it up. Medical examinations show they are experiencing real physiological stress. Psychological evaluations show they are not delusional. But the sound they hear apparently does not exist as an external acoustic phenomenon that instruments can detect. So what is happening in Taos? And why does it only affect 2% of people? And why has no one, despite millions of dollars in investigation, been able to explain it? Before we dive deeper into Taos specifically, we need to understand what low-frequency sound actually is and why it is so difficult to study. Human hearing typically ranges from about 20 Hz to 20,000 Hz. The Taos Hum is reported at the very low end of this range, 30 to 80 Hz. This is the frequency range of bass notes, thunder, large engines. Low-frequency sound behaves differently than higher frequencies. It travels farther, penetrates buildings more easily, is harder to localize. You cannot point to where it is coming from because the wavelengths are so long that your brain cannot process directional information the way it does with higher sounds. Low-frequency sound is also felt as much as heard. It can cause vibrations in the body, resonate in cavities like the chest or sinuses, create a sense of pressure. This is why people describe the hum as something they feel rather than just hear. Importantly, sensitivity to low-frequency sound varies dramatically among individuals. Some people are extremely sensitive. Others are essentially deaf to these frequencies. This is not a matter of better or worse hearing generally. It is specific sensitivity to particular frequency ranges. This variability explains why only some people in Taos can hear the hum. Their ears and nervous systems happen to be tuned to detect these particular frequencies. It is not that they are imagining it or that they have some special ability. They are simply at one end of the normal distribution of low-frequency hearing sensitivity. Now, Taos is not the only place where persistent unexplained humming has been reported. Similar phenomena have been documented in Bristol, England, Bondi, Australia, Windsor, Ontario, Kokomo, Indiana, Largs, Scotland. The list goes on. These are called hum locations, places where a significant number of residents report hearing a persistent low-frequency sound that cannot be explained or eliminated. In some locations, the source has eventually been identified. In Kokomo, it turned out to be industrial cooling fans at a Daimler Chrysler plant. Once identified and modified, the hum stopped. But in other locations, including Taos, no source has ever been found despite exhaustive investigation. The Taos hum specifically became famous because of the thoroughness of the investigation and the credibility of the people involved. This was not a handful of complainers. This was hundreds of residents across all demographics, blue-collar workers and artists, young and old, newcomers and long-time residents. And crucially, the local and federal government took it seriously enough to fund significant research. The investigation in Taos began in earnest in 1993 and continued for years. Multiple teams, multiple approaches, acoustic analysis, seismographic monitoring, interviews, medical examinations, geographic mapping. They tried everything. The hearers were consistent in their descriptions. A low-frequency hum, worse at night, worse indoors than outdoors, worse in certain parts of town than others. Many reported that it seemed to come from the north or northwest. Some said it pulsed slightly. Others described it as completely steady. The research teams set up sensitive microphones and recording equipment across Taos. They monitored for days and weeks. They captured all the ambient sound. They analyzed every frequency. They looked for patterns. And they found normal small-town acoustic environment. Traffic, wind, distant aircraft, HVAC systems, animals. Nothing unusual. Nothing that matched the frequency and characteristics the hearers described. One hypothesis was that the sound was too low for the equipment to detect. Infrasound below 20 Hz. So they brought in equipment specifically designed for infrasound monitoring. Still nothing that correlated with when the hearers reported the sound being present or absent. Another hypothesis was that it was not acoustic at all, but electromagnetic. Radio frequency interference somehow being perceived as sound. They monitored the electromagnetic spectrum. Again, nothing unusual. The investigators even considered whether it might be seismic. Vibrations in the earth that some people could feel. Seismographs detected normal background seismic activity. Nothing that matched the timing or characteristics of the reported hum. By the end of the official investigation in the mid-90s, the conclusion was essentially, we do not know. The hearers are genuinely experiencing something. But we cannot detect it with instruments. We cannot identify a source. We cannot explain it. This non-conclusion is what makes the Taos hum so frustrating and so fascinating. It is not that the investigation was inadequate. It was thorough. It is not that the witnesses are unreliable. They are consistent. It is not that the equipment was insufficient. It was state-of-the-art for the time. Something is happening. We just do not understand what. Subscribe if you appreciate mysteries that resist explanation despite serious investigation. Because we are about to explore every theory, every hypothesis, and why none of them quite work. The official investigation may have concluded without identifying a source, but that did not stop researchers, journalists, and the hearers themselves from developing theories. Over the past 3 decades, numerous explanations have been proposed. Let us examine the most plausible. Theory 1. Industrial or mechanical source. The most obvious explanation is that some machinery or industrial process in or near Taos is generating the sound. Factories, power plants, pumps, ventilation systems, large motors running continuously. The problem, Taos is not an industrial town. It is a small artistic community in the mountains of northern New Mexico. There are no major factories. The few industrial operations that exist were all investigated and ruled out. The local utility equipment was monitored. Nothing matched. Some theorists pointed to the Los Alamos National Laboratory, about 60 miles away. Los Alamos does defense research, maybe secret projects involving underground facilities or unusual equipment. Investigators looked into this. Los Alamos officials cooperated. No evidence linked any Los Alamos activity to the Taos Hum. The distance is also problematic. Low-frequency sound can travel far, but 60 miles through mountainous terrain is pushing credibility. Theory 2. Military or governmental source. Perhaps the hum is generated by classified military operations, underground bases, high-powered radio transmitters, aircraft testing, submarine communication systems. The United States Navy operates extremely low-frequency transmitters for communicating with submarines. These generate frequencies in the range some hearers report. However, the nearest such facility is in Wisconsin, far from New Mexico. And these systems generate electromagnetic waves, not acoustic sound, though some people claim to be able to hear certain electromagnetic frequencies. The military angle is attractive because it explains why the source cannot be found and why the government investigation might have been inconclusive. If the source is classified, investigators might have been told to back off. But this runs into Occam's razor. Why would the military create a sound that affects civilians and then allow public investigations? If they wanted secrecy, easier to not generate an unexplained noise in the first place. And again, no correlation has been found between military activity and the reported hum. Theory 3. Geological or natural source. Perhaps the hum is generated by natural processes. Tectonic activity, underground water flow, acoustic resonance in rock formations, Earth itself creating sounds that some humans can perceive. Taos sits in a geologically active area. The Rio Grande Rift runs nearby. Perhaps movements in the crust generate vibrations that manifest as sound to sensitive individuals. Seismographic monitoring during the investigation found normal background seismic activity, but nothing that correlated with a hum. However, seismographs measure ground motion. Perhaps the relevant phenomenon is acoustic pressure waves in rock that do not translate to detectable ground movement but do propagate as sound through air. This theory has the advantage of explaining why no human-made source can be found. It also explains the geographic specificity. Certain locations might have geological features that amplify or channel these natural vibrations. The disadvantage is that we have no clear mechanism. How exactly would geological processes create a steady hum at 30 to 80 Hz? Earthquakes generate infrasound. Volcanic activity generates sound. But a steady, persistent hum? The geology does not quite support it. Theory 4. Atmospheric or meteorological source. Perhaps the hum is created by atmospheric conditions, wind patterns, temperature inversions, acoustic ducting where sound is channeled over long distances through atmospheric layers. Taos is at 7,000 feet elevation in a mountainous area with complex wind patterns. Perhaps under certain conditions, distant sounds are channeled and amplified in ways that create the perceived hum. Meteorological data was reviewed during the investigation. No strong correlation was found between weather conditions and hum reports. Some hearers reported the hum during storms, others during calm, clear nights. No consistent pattern emerged. Theory 5. Mechanical resonance in buildings or infrastructure. Perhaps the hum is created by resonance in structures, buildings, power lines, pipes vibrating at natural frequencies. Only some buildings resonate. Only some people positioned correctly hear it. This was investigated extensively. Hearers reported the hum in different buildings across town. Some heard it outdoors. Some heard it in cars. The distribution did not match what you would expect from building resonance. Moreover, structural resonance typically has an external driving force. Wind, traffic, machinery. Investigators could not identify what would be driving consistent resonance across multiple structures. Theory 6. Tinnitus or otoacoustic emissions. This is where we transition from external explanations to internal ones. Perhaps the hum is not an external sound at all, but something generated within the ear or brain of the hearer. Tinnitus is the perception of sound with no external source, usually ringing or hissing. But some people experience low-frequency tinnitus, a hum or rumble. What if the Taos Hum is mass tinnitus? A cluster of people in one area all developing the same internal auditory phenomenon? This explains why instruments cannot detect it. It is not there externally. It explains the 2% prevalence. That is roughly consistent with severe tinnitus rates in the general population. It explains the individual variation in perception. But it does not explain why Taos specifically. Tinnitus is distributed randomly. Why would so many cases cluster in one small town? And why would they all describe essentially the same sound? Tinnitus is typically highly individual in character. Otoacoustic emissions are sounds generated by the inner ear itself. Everyone produces them, but usually we do not consciously perceive them. Perhaps hearers are perceiving their own otoacoustic emissions? Again, this does not explain the geographic clustering or the consistency of descriptions. And medical examinations of hearers showed some had normal otoacoustic emissions and others did not. No pattern consistent with the theory. Theory 7. Electromagnetic sensitivity. Some people claim to be able to hear electromagnetic fields, power lines, cell towers, Wi-Fi routers. Perhaps the Taos Hum is not acoustic but electromagnetic, perceived as sound by sensitive individuals? Electromagnetic hypersensitivity is controversial. Most scientific studies find no evidence that people can reliably detect electromagnetic fields below safety limits. Double-blind tests typically show self-reported sensitive individuals cannot distinguish when fields are present or absent. But perhaps a small percentage genuinely can? And perhaps something in Taos generates unusual electromagnetic activity? Electromagnetic monitoring during the investigation found nothing unusual, and hearers reported the hum predating modern wireless technology. It was reported before cell towers and Wi-Fi were widespread. So unless it is power lines which have been investigated, this theory struggles. Theory 8. Psychological or sociological phenomenon. Perhaps the Taos Hum is essentially mass suggestion. One person reports a sound. Others, primed to listen for it, start perceiving ambiguous sensory information as a hum. The phenomenon spreads through community discussion. This is not the same as saying people are faking it. Perception is constructed. If you're told to listen for a low hum, you might start noticing low-frequency ambient sounds you normally ignore. Your brain filters them differently. You genuinely hear something that was always there, but now bothers you because you are aware of it. This explains the geographic clustering. It explains why investigations find nothing. It explains the individual variation. But it does not quite fit the data. Hearers include people who moved to Taos and started hearing the hum before they knew about it. People who heard it for months before mentioning it to anyone. The phenomenon seems too consistent and too independent across individuals to be purely social contagion. If this investigation is making you frustrated that none of the theories quite work, leave a like. Because that is exactly how researchers, none is fully satisfying. Here is where the Taos Hum gets even stranger. Because Taos is not alone. The phenomenon of unexplained persistent humming has been reported in dozens of locations worldwide, each with its own characteristics, each with its own investigation. Some solved, many not. Bristol, England, has one of the most famous hums, first reported in the 1970s. Persistent low-frequency humming affecting a small percentage of residents, despite investigations never explained. Windsor, Ontario experienced a severe hum starting around 2011. Residents reported a sound so intense it caused physical symptoms: sleeplessness, dizziness, vibrations felt throughout the body. The Canadian government investigated. The sound was actually detected by instruments in this case. Spectrographic analysis showed a signature consistent with industrial processes on the American side of the Detroit River, specifically a steel plant and a blast furnace on Zug Island. This seemed like a solution, except the companies denied their operations could generate the sound. Access to the island was restricted. Verification was difficult. And even after some of the suspected facilities modified operations or closed, some residents still reported the hum. So maybe it was Zug Island. Or maybe that was just part of it. Or maybe it was something else that correlated with industrial activity. Kokomo, Indiana is the success story. The Kokomo hum was reported starting in 1999. Investigations identified two sources: an air compressor at a Daimler Chrysler plant, a cooling tower fan at another industrial facility, both operating at frequencies in the 50 to 60 Hz range. Once modifications were made to the equipment, the hum diminished significantly. Problem solved. This proves that sometimes the hum is real, external, and traceable. Industrial equipment can generate persistent low-frequency sounds that only sensitive individuals perceive. The Kokomo case validates that this is not always psychosomatic, but it also highlights how difficult these sounds are to trace. Kokomo's investigation took years, required acoustic experts, needed cooperation from industry, and the sources were relatively close to affected residents. What if the source is farther, or more diffuse, or intermittent? Largs, Scotland, reported a hum starting in the early 2000s. Persistent. Maddening. Investigations by environmental health officers found nothing. The hum continues. No explanation. Bondi, Australia. Oma, Northern Ireland. Auckland, New Zealand. Dozens of locations, all with similar reports. Low-frequency hum. Small percentage affected. No clear source. So is the Taos hum just one instance of a global phenomenon? If so, what does that tell us? One possibility is that industrial civilization generates many low-frequency sounds. Most are traced to specific sources. But in some locations, geography, architecture, or atmospheric conditions create situations where distant or diffuse sources combine or resonate in ways that create persistent hum. Only highly sensitive individuals perceive it. Investigations struggle because the source is not local or is too diffuse to pinpoint. Another possibility is that this is not acoustic at all, but neurological. Perhaps 2% of people have a quirk in their auditory processing that generates a phantom hum under certain conditions. Stress, aging, environmental triggers. The phenomenon appears in different places because the vulnerable individuals are distributed worldwide. The similarity of descriptions across locations suggests a common neurological mechanism rather than diverse external sources. A third possibility is that we are detecting something genuinely new about our environment. Perhaps electromagnetic pollution. Perhaps infrasound from increased industrial activity. Perhaps something we have not even considered. The hum might be the warning signal that a small percentage of humans can perceive, like canaries in a coal mine. But here is the most disturbing aspect of the hum phenomenon: the impact on the hearers themselves. For people who can hear the Taos hum, it is not a curiosity. It is a life-altering problem. Sleep deprivation leads to serious health consequences. Chronic stress, anxiety, depression. Some hearers have moved multiple times trying to escape the sound. Some have spent thousands of dollars on soundproofing. Some have considered or attempted suicide. There are online forums for hum hearers, support groups, people comparing experiences, sharing coping strategies. The desperation is real. These are not people seeking attention. They are people suffering from something they cannot escape and that most others cannot perceive or understand. Imagine trying to explain to your doctor that you are kept awake every night by a sound only you can hear. That investigation's found nothing. That moving did not help because you started hearing it in the new location too. How do you even approach treatment? Some hearers have found relief through white noise machines, earplugs, moving to noisier environments where ambient sound masks the hum. Others have found that accepting the sound reduces stress. Mindfulness, cognitive behavioral therapy, treating it like tinnitus, learning to habituate. But for some, nothing works. The sound persists. The sleep deprivation accumulates. The quality of life deteriorates. This is the human cost of unexplained phenomena. Not just curiosity, not just mystery, real suffering with no clear path to relief. Let us talk about what we actually know for certain about the Taos Hum and similar phenomena. 1. Some people genuinely hear a persistent low-frequency sound in certain locations. This is not mass delusion. Medical and psychological evaluations confirm hearers are experiencing real auditory perception. 2. The prevalence is low, roughly 2% of the population in affected areas. This strongly suggests individual sensitivity differences rather than a universally present stimulus. 3. The sound is described consistently. Low frequency, droning, persistent, worse at night, worse indoors. This consistency across independent reporters suggests either a real external source or a common neurological mechanism. 4. Extensive acoustic monitoring has failed to detect an external source in Taos and several other hum locations. Either the source is outside the detection capabilities of the equipment, or it is not acoustic at all. 5. In some locations like Kokomo, the source has been identified as industrial equipment. This proves that low-frequency hum can be real, external, and traceable under the right circumstances. 6. The phenomenon causes real suffering. Sleep deprivation, stress, health impacts. This is not trivial or imaginary. Given these facts, what is the most likely explanation? The truth is probably not a single answer, but a combination. Some hum cases are external industrial or mechanical sources that are difficult to trace due to distance, diffusion, or intermittent operation. Some cases are geological or atmospheric phenomena we do not fully understand. Some cases are neurological, either tinnitus-like or electromagnetic sensitivity. Some cases may be psychological, heightened awareness of normally ignored ambient sound. Taos specifically might be a combination. Perhaps there is a weak external source, too diffuse or distant to pinpoint, that affects only the most sensitive individuals. Perhaps certain people have a neurological predisposition that is triggered by environmental factors specific to the Taos area. Perhaps it is interaction between subtle environmental stimuli and individual biology. The reason investigations fail to find a definitive answer is that they are looking for a single cause. One frequency, one source, one mechanism. But complex phenomena rarely have simple explanations. Consider that human perception is not passive recording. It is active construction. Your brain takes sensory input and builds a model of reality. When input is ambiguous or weak, the brain fills in gaps, makes assumptions, amplifies certain signals based on attention and expectation. Perhaps the Taos Hum is a perceptual edge case. Something in the environment, subtle and complex, that interacts with individual biology and psychology to create consistent subjective experience that does not map neatly to objective measurement. This does not mean it is not real. Perception is real. Suffering is real. But it might mean the phenomenon is more complicated than external source making sound that some people hear. It might be environment plus biology plus attention creating experience. If this is true, it explains why investigations fail. It is co-created by environment and perceiver. But this explanation is not satisfying to hearers. Telling someone their experience is perceptual does not help them sleep. Telling someone the sound is interaction between subtle stimuli and their neurology does not make it stop. What hearers need is relief, and that requires different approaches depending on the actual mechanism. If external source, identify and eliminate or modify. If neurological, treat like tinnitus with therapy and coping strategies. If electromagnetic, environmental modifications and shielding. If psychological, cognitive behavioral approaches and stress reduction. The challenge is determining which applies to which case. The Taos Hum remains unsolved, not for lack of effort, not for lack of expertise, not for lack of resources. The investigation was thorough. The witnesses are credible. The equipment was sophisticated. Sometimes mysteries resist solution not because we are not trying hard enough, but because reality is more complex than our frameworks can currently capture. Here is what the Taos Hum teaches us. First, human perception is variable. We do not all experience the same physical reality in the same way. Two people in the same room might have genuinely different sensory experiences. Neither is wrong. They are just different. Second, the absence of objective measurement does not invalidate subjective experience. If someone says they hear something and multiple someone say it consistently, that is data. Even if instruments cannot detect it. The phenomenon exists at some level, even if we cannot fully characterize it. Third, unexplained does not mean supernatural. The Taos Hum is almost certainly natural. We just do not understand the mechanism yet. Our ignorance is not evidence of the paranormal. It is evidence that reality is complicated and science is a work in progress. Fourth, suffering is suffering regardless of explanation. People experiencing the hum need help whether the cause is external acoustic, internal neurological, or perceptual. Dismissing their experience because we cannot measure it is not acceptable. Your experience is valid even if science cannot fully explain it yet. If you do not hear the hum, remember that 2% do. And for them, it is real. It is persistent. It is maddening. A little understanding and compassion go a long way. The Taos Hum is a reminder that the world still contains mysteries. Not ancient mysteries from forgotten civilizations. Modern mysteries. Happening now. Documented. Investigated. And still unexplained. Share this if you appreciate that some questions do not have easy answers. Because the Taos Hum is one of those questions. 3 decades of investigation. Hundreds of witnesses. State-of-the-art equipment. And still, we do not know. Welcome to Hinternight Stories, where we investigate mysteries that are documented, real, and stubbornly resistant to explanation. Not because we love mysteries, but because we respect evidence. And sometimes the evidence leads to we do not know yet. The Taos Hum is still humming. Still unexplained. Still maddening the 2% who can hear it. And science, for all its power, still cannot tell them why.